Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Whispers. The air in the small village in northern Thailand was thick with the scent of wood smoke, chili, and damp earth. It was a world away from the sterile, air-conditioned life I had known. For the past 3 months, my girlfriend, Chloe, and I, along with her two friends, Maya and Jess, had been on a budget backpacking trip through Southeast Asia. It was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime. For me, it had become an exercise in anxiety. I was the planner, the budgeter, the one who carried the first aid kit and knew the embassy's phone number by heart. Chloe and her friends were free spirits. They saw my caution not as a form of care, but as a cage. They lived for the perfect Instagram photo, the authentic experience, which usually meant spending money we didn't have on something they had seen another travel blogger do. The argument started, as they often did, over a decision. I had found us a cheap, clean guest house for the night. They wanted to join a group of people they had just met for a traditional overnight trek to a hill tribe village, an excursion that cost $100 each and for which we were completely unprepared. I said no. I pointed to our dwindling budget, to the fact that we had no proper gear, that we didn't know these people. The argument escalated quickly. I was called a control freak, a killjoy. Chloe, egged on by her friends, delivered the final stinging blow. "You're not a travel partner, Alex," she'd said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're a tour guide on a trip no one wants to take." I went to bed that night in our small bamboo hut, the silence thick with resentment. I assumed, foolishly, that we would talk it out in the morning. I woke up to the sound of a rooster crowing and the profound, unnerving silence of an empty room. Chloe's backpack was gone. A quick, frantic check confirmed that Maya and Jess were also gone from their adjoining hut. My first thought was that they had gone on the trek without me, a petty, vindictive act, but one I could almost understand. Then I saw the note on my pillow. It was written on a napkin in Chloe's loopy, cheerful handwriting. "Hey, sleepyhead, decided we needed to teach you a lesson in spontaneity. A real traveler knows how to be independent. Your phone, wallet, and passport are having their own little adventure. Think of it as a scavenger hunt. First clue, the capital city. Don't be mad, it'll be a great story. See you at the embassy in Bangkok in a few days. XOXO, Chloe." The words on the napkin seemed to vibrate with a cruel, childish energy. I tore through my pack. It was all true. My passport, my wallet with every bit of cash and my credit cards, my phone, all gone. They had left me with nothing but the clothes I was wearing and a half-empty water bottle. This wasn't a lesson in spontaneity. This was an execution. They had left me for dead, metaphorically speaking, in a remote village where I didn't speak a word of the language, hundreds of miles from the first clue I had no way of reaching. The sheer breathtaking stupidity and cruelty of it was a physical blow. They thought this was a game, a great story for their blogs. They had seen the world through the lens of a smartphone for so long that they no longer recognized reality. They couldn't conceive of a situation that couldn't be fixed by a phone call to daddy or a witty post on social media. I stumbled out of the hut into the morning sun, my heart a frantic, trapped bird in my chest. The village was waking up. People were smiling, talking, going about their lives, completely oblivious to the fact that I had just ceased to exist. I was a ghost, a man with no name, no country, no money, no voice. My adventure had just begun, but it wasn't the one they had planned. The first 3 days were a descent into a special kind of hell. I was invisible. I tried to communicate my plight to the guest house owner, using frantic gestures, pointing at my empty pockets and drawing a picture of a passport. He just smiled, nodded, and pointed to the bill I owed for the room. I tried talking to the other backpackers passing through, but they looked at me with a mixture of suspicion and pity, assuming I was a scammer or a drug addict. No one wanted to get involved. I was a problem, a piece of human driftwood they had to navigate around. Hunger became my constant companion, a dull, gnawing ache that sharpened all my senses. I learned to watch the local market with the feral intensity of a stray dog, my eyes darting to the pieces of fruit dropped by a vendor or the half-eaten skewer of grilled meat left on a table. I drank water from the communal tap behind the temple, hoping it wouldn't make me sick. At night, I would find a dark corner in the temple courtyard to sleep, curling up on the cold stone, my body aching with a weariness that went deeper than muscle. I was becoming a specter, my old life a distant, dreamlike memory. The shame was the worst part. I had always been the capable one, the provider, the planner. Now I was a beggar, a non-person. The humiliation was a poison, and I could feel it killing the man I used to be. On the fourth day, I was sitting near a small open-air noodle shop, watching the steam rise from the bubbling pots, the smell of broth and spices a form of exquisite torture. I had reached my breaking point. I was defeated. I didn't have the energy to beg or gesture anymore. I just sat there, waiting for something. An old woman, the owner of the shop, had been watching me. Her face was a beautiful map of wrinkles, her eyes dark and intelligent. She came out from behind her counter, not with a stick to shoo me away, but with a small bowl of rice and fish. She set it on the ground in front of me, looked me in the eye, and gave a short, sharp nod before turning back to her work. I broke down. The tears came, hot and silent, dripping onto the packed dirt. It was the first act of pure, unconditional kindness I had received, and it broke through the wall of shame and despair I had built around myself. I ate the food slowly, savoring every grain of rice, every flake of fish. When I was done, I took the empty bowl back to her. I couldn't speak her language, so I communicated in the only way I could. I bowed deeply, my hands pressed together in a traditional Y, a gesture of profound respect. Then I pointed to the stack of dirty dishes by the washing station. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded again. That was my first day of work. My payment was another bowl of rice and a safe place to sleep on a woven mat in the shop's small storage room. It was the most luxurious bed I had ever known. My life found a new, simple rhythm. I would wake before dawn and help the old woman, whose name was Anong, and her son, Kael, set up the shop. I would wash vegetables, scrub pots, and haul buckets of water. I was the shop's silent, tireless ghost. During the day, I would wash every dish, my hands becoming permanently wrinkled and raw. I didn't mind. The mindless physical labor was a balm. It left no room for the ghosts of my past. Anang's granddaughter, a bright 7-year-old girl named Lynn, became my teacher. She found my attempts to speak her language hilarious. She would point at things and say the Thai word, giggling as I butchered the pronunciation. "Ma," she would say, pointing to a dog. "Ma," I would repeat, and she would collapse into laughter because I had used the wrong tone and said horse. Slowly, painstakingly, my world began to fill with words again. Water, thank you, work, good. I was a child again, learning to navigate the world one word at a time. The family never asked for my story. In their quiet, profound way, they understood. They saw not a failed tourist, but a man who was working to earn his place. They gave me a name, Alun, which meant dawn, because I had appeared with the morning sun. I was no longer Alex, the anxious planner from a world away. I was Alun, the dishwasher at Anang's noodle shop. The thought of Chloe and her friends, of the embassy in Bangkok, began to fade. That was a problem for another man, in another lifetime. My world was this village, this shop, this family that had taken in a ghost and given him a name. Years began to flow like the river that ran beside the village, steady and sure. The urgency to get back to my old life dissolved, replaced by the daily, meaningful rhythm of my new one. I was no longer just a dishwasher. Anang, with her silent, knowing eyes, saw my focus and my dedication. She began to teach me. She showed me how to balance the complex flavors of the broth that was the soul of her shop, the delicate dance of sweet, sour, salty, and spicy. She taught me to cook not from recipes, but from feeling, from the scent of the galanga and the color of the toasted chili. My role in the family and in the shop evolved. Kael, Anang's son, was a kind man but not a businessman. He was a farmer at heart. I, on the other hand, had a mind for logistics, a ghost of my former self that proved surprisingly useful. I started by organizing the storeroom. Then I created a simple system for tracking inventory, which saved them money. I noticed the occasional backpacker who would wander into the village confused by the lack of English menus. I hand-painted a simple sign with English translations and pictures. Business tripled. We used the extra money to buy new tables, to fix the leaky roof. I was no longer just earning my keep. I was contributing, helping the family that had saved me to prosper. I was building something real. My Thai became fluent, my accent colored by the local dialect.
I could joke with the village elders, haggle at the market, and tell stories to little Lynn, who was no longer so little. I was part of the community. They knew my story, in a simplified local version, the man who was left behind and chose to stay. There was no shame in it, only a quiet respect for a man who had remade himself. It was at the local market that I met Molly. She was a weaver, her hands as skilled with a loom as Anang's were with a wok. She had a quiet strength and a smile that could light up the entire market square. Our courtship was a slow, traditional affair, a world away from the frantic, digitally documented romance I had shared with Chloe. We fell in love over shared meals at the noodle shop, over long walks by the river, over a mutual understanding of what it meant to build a life with your hands. We married 2 years after we met, a simple ceremony at the village temple. The entire village came to celebrate. Anang, now frail, but with a spirit as fierce as ever, gave us her blessing, her hand on my cheek, a testament to the strange, beautiful journey that had brought me here. We built a small house on Cale's land, next to the river. Molly set up her loom on the porch, and the rhythmic clack, clack, clack became the soundtrack to my evenings. We took over the day-to-day running of the noodle shop, which we renamed Anang's Table in her honor. My life was full of a quiet, profound joy I had never known. The ambition and anxiety of my old life, the constant need to prove myself, had been replaced by a deep sense of belonging. I had a wife I adored, a family that had chosen me, and work that was honest and meaningful. I had long ago made a conscious decision. I could have, at any point in the last few years, saved enough money to go to Bangkok, to navigate the bureaucracy of getting a new passport, and to fly back to a life that was no longer waiting for me. But why would I? The man who had boarded that plane all those years ago was a stranger to me. His goals, his desires, his fears, they were meaningless. He had been chasing a version of happiness that had been sold to him. I had stumbled upon the real thing by accident, in the last place on earth I would have ever looked. My old life was about taking photos, taking experiences, taking a specific path to a predetermined future. My new life was about giving my time and skill to the family business, giving my love to my wife, giving my respect to the community that had embraced me. I was no longer a tourist. I was home.
The world changes, even in a village as timeless as ours. The trickle of backpackers I had first noticed years ago became a steady stream, and then a river. A travel magazine featured our region as Thailand's last authentic paradise, and the article mentioned a certain charming noodle shop run by a local family and their adopted foreign son. We became a destination. The change was both a blessing and a curse. We had to hire more staff, expand the kitchen, and deal with customers who were often more interested in taking a photo of their food than eating it. I found myself in the ironic position of using my old project management skills to handle the influx of the very kind of people I had once been. But we held fast to our principles. Anang's Table was not a tourist trap. It was our home, and we treated our customers as guests. We kept the menu simple, the ingredients fresh, and the welcome warm. My life with Molly was my anchor in this changing world. We had a son, A beautiful boy with his mother's smile and my stubborn determination. He was my world, the living embodiment of a future I never could have dreamed of. My past, the story of Alex, was a tale I would one day tell him. A strange fairy tale about a foolish boy who had to get lost to find his way. And then, one sweltering afternoon, the fairy tale came to life. A group walked into the restaurant, louder and more self-important than the usual backpackers. They had cameras, microphones, and a sense of entitlement that was a poison in the peaceful air of our shop. Leading them was a woman with bleached blonde hair, a practiced smile, and the hungry, restless eyes I had never truly forgotten. It was Chloe. She was older, harder, her free spirit persona now a polished commercial brand. She didn't see me at first. I was behind the counter, taking an order in Thai from an elderly neighbor. Chloe was busy directing her cameraman, framing a shot of our bustling open kitchen, narrating in a loud, cheerful voice for her audience. "And here we are," she said, "at the legendary Anang's table, a true hidden gem. They say the story behind this place is just incredible." And then she turned, and her eyes met mine. The practiced smile froze on her face. The color drained from it. The camera was still rolling, capturing the slow-motion car crash of her recognition. I saw a decade of buried history flash across her face. The argument, the note, the arrogant certainty of her prank. I simply held her gaze, my expression calm. I felt no surge of anger, no desire for revenge. I felt only a profound, vast distance, as if I were looking at a character from a book I had read a very long time ago. Her shock quickly morphed into something else, something I recognized all too well: opportunism. A predatory glint appeared in her eyes. The blogger in her took over. This wasn't a crisis, this was content. Gold-plated viral content. "Oh my God," she whispered, a perfect performance of astonished discovery. She walked towards the counter, her cameraman following her like a dog. "Alex, is that really you?" My staff, my family fell silent, sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere. Molly came to stand beside me, her hand resting gently on my back. I answered Chloe, not in English, but in fluent, colloquial Thai, turning to my wife and asking if she knew this person. It was a small act, but it was a declaration. "This is my language now. This is my home. You are the foreigner here." Chloe was flustered for a moment, then she switched back to her performance. "Don't you recognize me, Alex? It's me, Chloe. We thought something had happened to you. We looked for you." The lie was so audacious, so shameless, it was almost comical. She was trying to create a narrative on the fly, a story of a tragic misunderstanding with a heartwarming reunion. She saw a viral video, a multi-part series, a book deal. She saw a way to resurrect her slightly fading travel brand with the ultimate human interest story. I looked at her, at the desperate hunger in her eyes, the same hunger for attention that had led her to abandon me all those years ago. And I knew exactly what I had to do. "I know who you are," I said, switching to a quiet, calm English that cut through the noise of the restaurant. "But my name is not Alex." I gestured to my wife, my son who was playing in the corner, to the familiar faces of my neighbors eating at the tables. "This is my life. This is my family. You are a tourist here, and you are mistaken." She started to protest, to insist, but I held up a hand. "I think it is time for you to leave," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "We don't allow filming in our restaurant. Please respect our rules." Her face, which was being broadcast live to her thousands of followers, crumbled. The story she had imagined, the triumphant reunion, had just been publicly and calmly dismantled. She was no longer the hero of the story. She was just a trespasser. She and her crew, flustered and humiliated, backed away and fled out the door. The restaurant was silent for a moment, and then the normal chatter resumed.
Molly squeezed my arm. Caugh gave me a thumbs up from the kitchen. Anung, who had been watching from her chair in the corner, gave me one of her rare, beautiful smiles. The woman who had tried to teach me a lesson in independence had just received one herself. She had learned that my life was not her story to tell. Thank you for tuning in to Reddit Whispers. We've all faced moments when everything felt broken. What was your turning point? Leave it in the comments, because your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now.